What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Deep Dive. I'm Paul. That guy's Ian. And we're going to talk about an interesting premise, which is this. If every college football job was thrown open tomorrow, what would the basic tier ranking be for college football coaches of where they want to go coach? So we're sorting out individual motivations like I graduated from here or my family's from here. We're talking about pure mercenary. I want to be successful. I want to win titles. I want to win a bunch of football games. We throw open every job. Where do people want to go coach? And are there some tiers that are discernible in the new world of college football? And have those tiers changed with NIL, with conference realignment? Those are the things we're going to get into. And if you want to get into some great conversations about Texas football and really get some great information, you need to go join Inside Texas today. $1 4 months. Is that graphic right? It should be $100 for 4 months. Look, until they correct that error, you need to get in there and take advantage of the $1 for 4 months and laugh all the way to the bank. I just think that has to be a misprint for the quality of information and the quality of member that is at Inside Texas. Come join us. Be a part of the best conversation out there. Ian, there's also another great conversation that happens here on this very YouTube channel. We want you to subscribe. We want you to like. And thanks for being a part of our community. Make sure you send this around and see if some of your rival fans have similar opinions or they think we're insane. All right, Ian, what's going on, buddy? You ready to do this?
Yeah, let me throw out one more consideration.
Let's do it.
The current rosters, just pretend like those don't. We're not factoring that in.
Correct. So you're not factoring in, I get Arch Manning at quarterback. I get Carson Beck at Miami. We're just neutral program, throwing it all open. And where do you want to go? And you're going to build the program, right?
Yeah.
Where is the best potential? I think we all agree that great coaches can elevate a job. But the point is, there is a hierarchy, easy for me to say, of jobs and of programs. And if you don't believe that, ask a college football coach. They'll tell you. So with that in mind, Nick Saban, the GOAT, 34-24-1 at Michigan State, gets to LSU and Alabama, and then he becomes Nick Saban, all capital letters. So the program does matter, and Nick Saban would tell you that as well.
I think Mark D'Antonio may have had a better winning percentage at Michigan State than did Nick Saban.
He did. Yeah.
It's probably at least close.
Yeah, absolutely true. Interestingly, some coaches can elevate from a certain tier of program, right? Other coaches actually will struggle if they go a tier up. So that's also an interesting consideration. But we're trying to pretend that this is a purely rational market and, the long walk of economics and in the stock market here. We're trying to do that here. And we're going to start off with tier 3. These are the programs, and we don't have them in any rank order. I think our idea here is that you need a barely qualifying minimum. Once you hit that minimum, then your coaching, your quarterback, your senior cycle, your NFL draft picks, that will determine your ultimate success in any one given year or over a period of years. What we're saying is these programs are roughly approximate in the opportunity they offer a coach to win a national title and to have good winning seasons and a great deal of success starting now. And that's an important caveat, right, Ian?
Yeah.
Because some programs have amazing tradition. Nebraska, Syracuse, right?
Yeah.
Yale is the 7th winningest college football team. Doesn't matter. If your tradition doesn't serve to help you today, your tradition doesn't really matter. But some of these folks have traditions that do help them win. So let's talk about this. Controversial, who's controversial here and who belongs here in this tier 3?
I think so. These are like kind of our bubble teams, basically.
Yes, but you can win a national title here, right?
I think you could.
Yeah,
probably. But these are the ones where every tier above this, it's like no question, a great coach wins a national championship with the right circumstances. These ones, I feel like it's maybe a little more iffy from here. So I'll give you two. I think Florida State is iffy in that they almost belong a tier above, because like if you were going to take this job for the next 10 years, over the next couple of years, being in the ACC kind of helps you with your playoff path. But then over the 5 years after that,
that's the problem.
Your conference realignment is going to drag you down with acquiring talent. Or you're going to, NIL fund is going to take a huge dip when your donors spend all their money to buy you out and get you in the SEC or whatever, you know? And then on the other side of it, Texas A&M is just culturally incapable of winning.
That seems to be the conventional wisdom. I would say they still belong here, though, because every other logical and rational reason says there's no excuse for Texas A&M not to be a really good program.
Mm-hmm.
Location, passion, fan base, alums. Their alums give. They give generously. They don't just rely on a rich guy. They have a large group of upper middle class alums who sort of tithe as part of being an Aggie, right? But to your point, there's a Barney Fife-like quality of they're only allowed to have one bullet, right? Because Andy Griffith is concerned that Barney's going to fire it off into his own foot. And there's just an element there with Texas A&M that they can't get out of their own way. But that's the case until they do get out of their own way. And then they're going to win a bunch of games. And it's all right there, right?
I think they are just culturally defined so oppositionally to outsiders that it clouds their ability to make rational decisions. They can't make a decision based on what's best. They have to make it on what should an Aggie do, you know?
They don't have a WWJD bracelet. They have a WWAD bracelet.
Yeah. And then they will just fall back on, at least we died as Aggies.
So interestingly with this group, and I think Florida State, you could argue them up. Here's where I think they probably do belong in tier 3. The conference affiliation thing you talked about, probably a short-term advantage. Longer term, there's a reason Florida State's moving heaven and earth to get out of the ACC.
Yeah.
The other part of this, find Tallahassee on a map and look at the programs immediately in their vicinity. It's all SEC powerhouses. And I don't, and I say historically, I don't pretend to be an expert on the Seminoles, but I'd say historically, they've done a good job of some national recruiting, but certainly owning Southern Georgia and Northern Florida. When Georgia is really strong, when Florida is on the rise, when LSU is on your perimeter, when Alabama's just due northwest of you with Auburn, you're squeezed by all these SEC schools. And I kind of wonder, people criticize Norvell for the mercenary approach, and it worked 2 years ago, didn't work so great last year. I kind of think that they're being squeezed into that because they're not able to compete with some of these programs head to head. And I wonder if that diminishes them. So in a way, I think the fact that they're tier 3 after a 2-10 season speaks to some degree of respect that we have for Florida State, right?
Yes. To me, they're one of the better comps for Oklahoma. Them and Tennessee, which I know you've argued, and you can make that argument in a minute, perhaps. But they're like right on the periphery of all this talent. And with Oklahoma's like just a little bit removed from most of the talent.
Florida State is amongst that talent.
Florida State is amongst it, but they're not the biggest dog to the bowl.
Not anymore.
Not anymore. And I think they were like, they were called Free Shoes University for a reason.
Right.
I think they used to glean an advantage from being a little more scurrilous than other people were willing to be. And that has gone down. Clemson used to be like not a big deal in college football. And just adding Clemson to their north on the other side of Atlanta is rough. Georgia figuring things out is rough. So you can see why they were stronger in the past than they are now, just from some of that.
Yeah. So Tennessee, I'll offer this very quickly. A program that had really been sleepwalking for 20 plus years, frankly. Heupel has revitalized them. Tennessee is hugely reliant on going and getting their groceries down the highway. They can't get them next door. And it's always made them have to go and compete with other people in their backyard. Now, interestingly, demographically, as the state of Tennessee is blowing up and as it's changing and shifting, I think that's to Tennessee's long-term benefit. I also think they care a lot. Like Neyland Stadium has 100 and something thousand every home game for a reason.
Yeah.
And I think there's some tradition and some different things you can sell people on. Historically, a program willing to cut corners to get recruits still somehow managed to lose while doing so. I think NIL, I think they'll be fine in this new world because I think you're seeing demographically there's a larger growth and frankly enriching of the South that's happening right now in America broadly. Tennessee's a beneficiary. Obviously, Georgia's a beneficiary. You'll see it with some other SEC schools. Auburn, I think you have to include almost like an A&M in that when it all lines up there, we know what they're capable of and capable of being. And they've done it before. There's proof in the pudding. It happens much more frequently than you think. If you go look up Auburn's record year to year, man, that's an erratic program. I mean,
it's
currently going through a walk in the woods in the wilderness of their own, right?
Yeah. I think it's mostly because they are surrounded by tier 1, tier 2, and tier 3 programs.
Yes.
And so it's just so hard for them to stand out.
But they have and they can.
It's like being Poland.
They're the Ukraine or the Poland of Eastern Europe. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't be between great powers with large, long, flat grazing lands. Never a good thing historically.
Right. Exactly.
Hey, OU, we can actually cover quickly. I wrote a specific article about this on Inside Texas. You can see some of the rationale for this. If we had done this 7 years ago, Ian, OU's not in tier 3.
Yeah, probably tier 2.
They're tier 2.
Yeah.
I think that there have been some demographic shifts and some different shifts in NIL and some other stuff that's going on that has not favored them. Fully capable of still weaponizing and winning it all with the right coach. But boy, I think their margins of error are much smaller than they were just 10 years ago.
I think theoretically, everything that's happening that's positive in the South is also happening in Oklahoma. But sometimes, like, not to the same degree as in other places.
Yeah.
So they're just like, even if they're also benefiting, they're not able to catch up.
Well, and one advantage of the South is even as dense as it is and as competitive as it is recruiting wise, when you are in your home base, there's great athletes everywhere. OU certainly has the draw of the people of Oklahoma. Arguably, there's no school more passionate about their football team. However, there are individual years where the entire state of Oklahoma has 3 4-stars.
Right.
That ain't good. So people will try to say, well, Alabama doesn't. No. Alabama will have 15 to 18 4-stars.
Yeah.
And those state lines, Texans tend to think that driving everywhere else in the country, unless you've done it, you tend to think state lines mean something because Texas is so big. When you start in the middle or on one side, you can get to Mississippi, Alabama, Louisiana easily. It's not that hard. So I think this is our tier 3. Anything we want to add before we go to tier 2?
Yeah, just that Oklahoma and Nashville and Knoxville are both outside of, there's like those areas where state lines are kind of, like the broader deep South, like you're saying, is basically just one running area.
Yes.
With very few changes across state lines. But Knoxville and Norman are outside of that. Fayetteville, Arkansas is actually outside of that. Austin is outside of it, but Austin is in the Texas Triangle. So
Texas populational triangle, and one benefit of Texas and Austin sort of being hot, direct flight to like every place on the planet, right?
Yes.
Multiple direct flights. So always useful. I'm going to make an audible and I'm going to service our outstanding sponsor right now because I know we're going to get sidetracked as we go through tier 2 and tier 1. I'm talking about Gabe Winslow. You can reach him at 832-557-1095. Hey, there's a lot of turmoil going on right now. You need to talk to a great mortgage broker that you can have in your corner for the biggest financial decision most of us will ever make in our lives, buying a house or refining your existing house. Gabe is the guy to do it. Over 200 5-star Google reviews with paragraph after paragraph listing how great he is. Also, we've got a ton of viewers of the deep dive and listeners of my Everyone Gets a Trophy podcast who use Gabe and have written me nice personal notes saying, this guy is absolutely phenomenal. Thank you. Find out why he's getting such kudos. Reach him, 832-557-1095. A tier 1 mortgage guy. All right, Ian, let's talk about tier 2. And again, we're not ranking here. We're just saying this is the next tranche up. LSU, Penn State, Clemson, and USC. That is an interesting grab bag of programs because we have big ceilings and maybe low floors with USC, depending on their alumni interest at the moment, right? You've got Clemson, although they have a history, they had a national title, sort of a weird one back in the early 80s. They'd sort of been irrelevant to larger college football until Dabo. And he was their Bobby Bowden in a sense. Like he made Clemson super relevant, won a couple of national titles, won a bunch of football games, has absolutely maximized that program. It's tempting to put Clemson in tier 3 if you just look at the program sort of historically. My contention would be that Dabo Swinney has actually elevated this program and they've built it out in support where the next coach will have a chance at continuing to have success at Clemson. Penn State, arguably the best floor in college football. They care a lot. They put money. They've got a large group of upper middle class alums who give money to Penn State. They have a regional identity. Pennsylvania football sort of declined from the days of Joe Willie Namath. Still puts out good athletes. And if you can kind of dominate that, that's a great floor. And then LSU. I think the big question and many people would put LSU in tier 1, I think. I think the big question for LSU going forward, Ian, is do they have enough money to keep up with this NIL focus of the future? There's only so many children's hospitals you can embezzle from. So what's their future? But we know what LSU looks like when they're weaponized. As recently as 2019, arguably one of the greatest college football teams ever. So what do you think about this group? What are your general impressions?
I think some of them are tricky because we've not seen them in a lot of contexts. Like we've seen Clemson be the program that no one ever thinks about. And then we've seen Dabo Clemson, which is clearly like a maximized power, right? We think that can continue with the right coach. That makes sense. Penn State may actually be a tier 1 job if they had an elite coach.
Yeah.
They've had like basically 2 coaches ever. And like James Franklin is like the ultimate floor coach. And Paterno, I don't even know. That was like such a different era. He seems like he was pretty good. But he got real old. They have they're kind of the top dog in Virginia sometimes when they want to recruit Virginia, which is a huge deal. They are the most serious program in easy access of the Mid-Atlantic. They have the Western PA thing that you're talking about that isn't what it used to be, but it's still a thing. They care. They have money. It almost seems like it's possible that Penn State is a tier 1 job, and we've just never seen it wielded that way. Whereas LSU is like, can't help but be good, even though they don't have tier 1 resources, just because it's just so crowded with athletes, and they're in the SEC, so they have SEC TV money.
It's an appealing place to play football.
LSU.
Yeah.
Yeah.
it's fun to be the Johnny Hotshot on that campus.
Right.
And it's a fun fan base they care about their Tigers. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The question is, are they viable at a tier 1 level going forward in terms of their ability to pay players?
Right.
And that's going to be an interesting tension for that program. And I think we'll see that with maybe a couple of the tier 1s when we talk about those.
You see that with USC too, where it's sometimes like they paid Riley an enormous sum of money, and then they didn't get the results they were expecting in the first couple of years, and now it seems like the money is not quite there anymore.
Well, having lived in California for some time period of time, I can tell you that Californians are front runners, and all fans can be front runners to some degree. But Californians are what all things are, plus 20%, right? And when USC is going, it's a juggernaut. When USC is struggling, they find other stuff to do. I mean, really the only team that I can think of in California that has like tried and true fans is Lakers.
Yeah.
And that's about it.
Maybe the Dodgers.
Maybe the Dodgers. Yeah, the Dodgers too. That's it. And those are pro sports. But USC, here's the upside of USC. They sit next to, within 45 minutes of the best 5 or 6 like talent-rich per capita high school programs you'll find.
Yeah.
And Southern California is still loaded with recruits. So people are saying, well, kids aren't playing football in high school in California anymore. And like, I understand in Santa Monica, that's what you're seeing, sports journalist or whatever. That's not what's happening in Fresno. That's not what's happening in Orange County. That's not what's happening in Stockton. People still play football and the kids are still rough and tough. So
it's not what's happening in the burgeoning Pacific Islander communities across the West Coast.
The Tongans in Long Beach still play football. I promise. So USC is sitting on that gold mine, and they're virtually unopposed. UCLA is not a serious program. There's really no other serious college program in California. And USC solved a big problem by joining the Big Ten. So let's not downplay conference affiliation here. That looms large down the road for Clemson, doesn't it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've seen this to some extent going from living in the Ann Arbor area to Liberty Hill. And all of a sudden, instead of like the dads at birthday parties that I run into being like engineers and doctors and things, it's like vets who've been like multiple tours of duty.
Yeah.
And will like chat with me about watching Ukrainian guys like fighting with drones on YouTube, or Shane Gillis. And then like they turn to their kid and they're like, hey, front and center. You know, it's very different. It's very different. That still exists in a lot of parts of the country.
Yeah, for sure. All right, that's our tier 2. Let's go to tier 1. Oh, we could barely fit. We put 8 teams in here. And if you want to bump a couple of these down to tier 2, I get it. It's all understandable. I don't think these are remotely controversial. I think the big debate is it tier 1, tier 2, maybe. I don't think you're dropping any of them out of this list, right?
If this went viral and someone screenshotted this, it would get all kinds of crap. Mostly ripped from the context of where are we going in the next 10 years. Because people would say like recency bias or whatever. Like if people were doing like a blue blood list and people get all precious about what a blue blood is, it has to be like earned or something. I don't know.
I mean, the blue blood stuff is kind of nonsense. Someone's like authoritatively said on Twitter, these are the 7 blue blood schools, and 2 of them were not. So I don't even know what they're talking about. What we're saying is, from this day forward, who is best poised to be a tier 1 job? I don't think Ohio State, Texas, Florida, Georgia are particularly controversial. Is that fair? If you kind of understand the dynamics of college football?
I think Florida might be because we've seen them be in disarray so much.
But that's not the inherent
I
program.
know. We've seen them be in disarray a lot, and so people are going to lean Florida. Florida and Texas are also schools that are very rewarding to hate.
Yes.
Because they are very arrogant. We are very arrogant as Texas people. And then when they fall down, it's like watching a man in a tuxedo fall into mud, like slip trying to get out. It's just the funniest thing you can imagine.
That's great.
People absolutely feel that way about Texas and Florida, so they will, and Michigan too as well.
Sure.
But I'm with you. They're on another level when they actually get all the BBs in the box, as we like to say.
If you asked me to do this list 10 years ago, Notre Dame's nowhere near tier 1.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're tier 2. But the legalized paying of players has benefited Notre Dame more than any other college football team in the country.
I think revenue sharing will also benefit Notre Dame as much or more than in every other.
Absolutely. So the point is the inherent conditions of college football have changed. And you've got to realize that it's not just that Notre Dame played for the national title last year, although I don't think that's a coincidence. And hiring Marcus Freeman was part of this. But how are things positioned going forward? Notre Dame is really well positioned. And I think that's a big change, and it's a huge shot of adrenaline to their program. By the way, Brian Kelly didn't see this coming, and he was there and successful there, right?
Big mistake.
But it's hard to know, man. It's hard to see these little shifts and how it's going to actually affect things, and you don't realize it sometimes until it happens. I think Notre Dame is in tier 1, and they would not have been there a decade ago, in my opinion. Under the old circumstances. Oregon.
Can I say something about Notre Dame real quick?
Yeah, please.
One place where you can see this is that superficially, it looked like last year it was just like scrappy Riley Leonard, just kind of dragging him to win after win. And that definitely was part of it. But they also had like injury after injury to players that in the past, you lose one of those guys and Notre Dame is done.
Yep.
And they lost like 3 or 4 of those guys, and you're like, done, over, not going to see them again. And some of the young guys that they had come in and step into roles were shockingly large and athletic and talented.
Yeah.
And they kept going.
There's fundamentally a different type of athlete at Notre Dame right now than there's been in 30 years.
Yes.
And that is something you need to notice. Oregon, a clear example of emphasis of caring about football, making it a priority, deciding this is going to be a touchstone of our student culture here, right? We're the California alternative school sitting up here in the beautiful Pacific Northwest. And we have a rich benefactor who is the greatest marketer, arguably, of our century in Phil Knight, who's worth several $billion. And people laugh. It's like, well, once you're worth $1 billion, it's like, well, there's a difference also in being a benefactor between being worth 50 billion and being worth 1 billion, right?
Yes.
And Phil Knight has created this program, and they've done a good job. They've done a good job hiring. They've done a good job building out the marketing, which is incredible. And as much as old fuddy-duddies like us roll our eyes at their uniforms, the people that they're appealing to, they think those uniforms are lit. And they're all about it. So I think they do belong there. The question is what happens post-Knight. I think he's going to leave a lot of money to Oregon and their athletic program. So the question is, how will they do without his guiding hand and making some of their marketing decisions and some of their even coaching hires?
They're right next door to the Nike headquarters, right?
Oh yeah, it's right there.
So it's like not only is their benefactor this amazing marketer and multi-billionaire, but his business is sports apparel.
Right.
It's like it couldn't be better, right? So you could see why any number of enterprising Nike executives in the future might see things similarly. Like it behooves us to make this team our little mascot and pump some money into this.
Let's talk about someone on the other side of the coin. All the tradition in the world, arguably the best tradition in terms of just pure winning, Alabama.
Oh,
They've just completed one of the greatest runs of college football dominance ever.
yeah.
They lose their all-time great coach. Are they wealthy enough to keep up?
I think they're wealthier than you would think for like a school down south. I met Alabama grads in Michigan because they import so much of their student body now and then send them back out. And so they've like got this diaspora of grads now across. This is common across the South in the SEC, but Alabama is certainly one of those schools that's doing that a lot. Do you remember when there was a year where like A&M bought the number one class and Nick Saban was really mad about it?
Yeah.
And then Alabama's next class was the new number one. So I don't think they're quite at the level of Oregon or Texas or maybe Georgia. It's kind of hard to tell. But it does seem like there's some money still. They don't have the Nick Saban discount.
That's part of it.
Yeah.
Right. There's not the Nick Saban discount. I also think money can be defined in different ways. And also I think there's a constancy or consistency of guaranteed NIL, and then there's surge years. I actually question Alabama's ability to keep it constant. I think they're capable of a surge year like Ole Miss. Ole Miss had a surge year last year of NIL. They all said, this is our opportunity. Let's do it. Ohio State did the same. But the difference is Ohio State can keep the constant money as well.
Yeah, that Epstein money does not stop.
Ole Miss is going to it's going to be fits and starts. I kind of think Alabama and LSU might be more like Ole Miss in that regard. However, you've got the Alabama and LSU brand that you're still recruiting to. There's no more Saban discount, but playing football at Alabama kind of means something still to people in that region.
You can also make, like we're watching Arch right now. Arch is racking up all these sponsorships.
Yeah.
Arch Manning in Austin, Texas with the Bevo brand. There's some of that for Alabama with like all their rank and file players with decent agents can actually make money locally the way NIL was intended.
I think there's a robust opportunity there for any football first school that cares. I don't think Alabama's particularly advantaged there compared to Auburn, compared to Florida, compared to anyone. The difference is that some of the local businesses in Austin are worth several $1 billion.
Yeah, yeah.
And so there's a difference between Ted's heating and plumbing supply versus Tesla, potentially, whatever, right?
Right.
So I think that's going to be kind of an interesting tension. Speaking of money and kind of a school kind of like Texas, and if you've met Michigan fans, there's some similarities. Michigan is a school that had to decide they wanted to be good at football and that it did diminish their academics. And they have decided that. And they've gotten some booster support that's been interesting as well. And they're in a conference where the upper tier seems pretty defined. So is it controversial they're in tier 1 or should they be dropped to tier 2?
I think their tradition, the consistency of how important football is to their fan base and donors, and then the fact that Larry Ellison dumped money for them to go buy Bryce Underwood are all tier 1
attributes.
Like Jim Harbaugh did not win by buying the best roster in college football.
No, it's developmental.
But that's not because Michigan can't do that. It's because Jim Harbaugh is incapable of glad handling those boosters and getting along with them and letting them have any say in his program. So he was like icing people out. And he's like, I don't need you. I'm going to do it on my own. And he did. The other coaches are not going to operate that way at Michigan. So
No.
that's not the only way you can win in Michigan. That's just the only way Harbaugh can do anything.
Agreed. Probably why he's back in the NFL.
What a great man.
I like Harbaugh too. He evidences strong reactions, let's say.
He's great.
I think he's hilarious. I think he's awesome. I think he's great for the sport. All right. So that's been our tier 1, our tier 2, tier 3. Again, we're talking about the programs. We're not talking about their individual situations or their coaches or what happened 5 years ago. We're talking about throw them all open today in the new current environment. And by the way, what's to come in this environment and who's best positioned to win a bunch of games and make a mark in college football. So are there any honorable mentions worth mentioning that you think could be included or might be up and comers down the road? Is there anything
up and comers?
There's some great high floor programs like Iowa or Wisconsin historically.
Yeah.
But I just don't see them making a mark or having that upside. Are we missing something?
Maybe one.
North Carolina.
Yeah.
Bill Belichick?
Not just Bill Belichick. It's the only thing stopping North Carolina from being a tier 1 job is North Carolina. That's just not something that they've done, right? Like regionally, North Carolina is pretty talent rich. It's not maybe quite the same as like Georgia or Alabama, but it's pretty close. And then you're still like right next to all those things. And then also within North Carolina, that is an exploding state and an exploding economy. Like there's like a whole deal of people that have moved from the Northeast to Florida and then been like, too much.
Halfway back up.
And they go back halfway to North Carolina. There's an entire town called Cary, Cary. And the locals call it the Cary Containment Area for Relocated Yankees. So there's the demographics, there's the money. There's just not excelling in football is not something that North Carolina's really gone for. And if they decide to do it, which it seems like they're doing with Belichick, we'll see if that stays constant for more than a year or two. There's really no reason why they couldn't be great.
Yeah, I think you're right.
The ACC thing hurts long term.
That's an anchor long term. And I think you can't force a culture, and their culture is basketball.
Yeah.
It just is. They enjoy football. I mean, it's what you do during the fall while you're waiting for basketball season. It's like Kentucky. Kentucky fans go to games. They enjoy football. They're waiting for basketball season. So I guess my question is, we've thrown out all these schools. Who would you choose, Coach Ian Boyd? Where do you want to start and you want to go win a national title?
Setting aside that I don't really ever want to leave Central Texas again, I still think I might choose Texas. It's every advantage that everybody knows about with Texas, plus the fact that all those advantages are likely to increase in the next 10 to 20 years.
Yeah.
Because everything with the state is going like this. The economy, with energy, with trade, up the I-35 corridor, the wonder of air conditioning, making some of the conditions in summer more tolerable. It's just everything in Texas is going up.
Yeah, from a long-term perspective, I think Texas, Florida, Georgia, they all make a lot of sense.
Yes.
If I want to go win a national title and get this checked off my to-do list as quickly as possible, and then maybe jet, Ohio State. They're maniacs.
Yep.
They've got every tradition, every bit of support. They're used to national recruiting. They've got a decent home base. They know they got to go to get their best players elsewhere for the most part. But they're maniacs in a good way and in a bad way. So I'm going to go win my title there, and then I'm going to go to the NFL before these people wear me out and wear me down, because I went 13-1 and my one loss was to Michigan, and now they want to fire me, right? So I would say you can't go wrong with anyone in the tier one. I tend to favor some of the demographic arguments that you made for long-term, like Texas, Georgia, Florida. But Ohio State, if I want to be one and done, I'm going to go be a Buckeye, win my title, and jet.
Do you know what else is another factor with them that is going to be constant for a very long time? Is that they make money from the Big Ten Network at the same level as any SEC network team, or
Yes.
more so. But they don't have to play SEC teams.
No.
Their toughest games are all teams that were like honorable mention.
Part of my reason for wanting to coach Ohio State is week to week, I'm pretty sure that I can circle the 3 teams on my schedule and do all my prep for them. And I'm pretty sure I can get by Purdue and Northwestern and Maryland. Although Maryland occasionally throws a scare into Ohio State when they decide to try. But yeah, I know I've got Michigan circled. I know I've got maybe a non-con, often no. And then I've got maybe Oregon to deal with, or maybe a USC, maybe somebody, Wisconsin's good that year. Everyone else, they're W's, baby. And that just doesn't exist to the same degree in the SEC, and I hate to sound like SEC babble here, but in any given week, yes, Auburn can beat you. In any given week, yes, that freaking Tennessee or even freaking Vanderbilt can be a burr in your saddle. You never know what could potentially happen with one of these programs, and that's look, Ole Miss didn't make the playoff because they lost a home game to Kentucky. I mean, it's just the reality of that league. So anyway, hope you guys have enjoyed these arguments, these timeless arguments. And amazingly, these schools move around more than you think based on new developments. So you guys, I'm sure, will tell us what you think. We'd love to hear it. As always, come join us at Inside Texas. And please like and subscribe to this channel.